Grid Live Pre-Race. The Tempo Speed is hosting Formula One, and McLaren is the favorite for the weekend. INDYCAR is at the Milwaukee Mile with 2 races and 1 championship on the line, and the Southern 500 weekend is here, and winning the crown jewel could bring a new face to the playoffs. Joe Samaniego, and with me we have Jackson Todd from 36xracing.com, and Jessica Ball is back ready to discuss racing. A big thank you to our Patreon investors calling the show, Mark, Robin, David, and Matthew, for investing in the Greg Network. Their monthly investment is helping out, including Jackson Lambros and I being at Portland International Raceway last weekend. Link in the video description. You can also do investment through Buy Me a Coffee and a one-time super chat or Buy Me a Coffee. Always appreciated. Jackson, let's get started with Formula One, where qualifying wrapped up less than 30 minutes ago, and we saw some big surprises in the field.
Oh, yeah. It is Italian Grand Prix weekend. Always a big one, but especially with the current state of the Constructors' Championship, could be a massive turning point. McLaren is entering Monza 30 points behind Red Bull. As you said, Joe, qualifying just wrapped up with Norris and Piastri securing a front row lockout for McLaren, with the Red Bulls set to start back in 7th and 8th. Verstappen can guarantee Red Bull maintained control of the Constructors' title leaving this weekend if he finishes on the podium. But a McLaren 1-2 would be a massive 43-point day on that 30-point margin. We talk about Verstappen often like he is the only Red Bull, but we can't forget that Sergio Perez can also bring in big points. There's certainly a lot of pressure on Perez. Constructor titles suddenly up for grabs. In the last three races, Perez has 2 7th-place finishes and a 6th place. That's only 20 points total. Jess, is the pressure on Perez mounting because the Constructor's title is suddenly up for grabs?
Definitely, because before the Dutch Grand Prix last week, the gap was even more than that. And with Max Verstappen not winning and Perez, a big gap between himself and Verstappen in the race, that posed a huge target on his back. Yes, the contract is all confirmed, but that doesn't mean that Perez can move over to VCAR, but if he's not doing well. McLaren have brought some huge upgrades, and Lando Norris and Piastri have consistently been performing very well, close to each other as well. Lando Norris took his first win since Miami, and he was able to prove us wrong with the winless drought that he had since Miami. Whereas Perez has not had a win this season. He started off very well. We were like, yeah, he's going to do brilliantly for most of the season, because he got 2 podiums in a row at the start of the season. He's got a podium in Japan and China. But then after Miami sort of slipped away, and pretty much there's certain drivers just waiting in the wings. Like we've got Liam Lawson waiting for a seat potentially, but I still don't think he's ready for Red Bull. I think he can move over to VCAR. Daniel Ricciardo could move up, but again, he's not ready. And then we also got the F2 champion, not the F2 champion, the F2 championship leader, Isaac Hadjar, that could be waiting in the wings as well. It's just a Red Bull Academy and just not using their drivers to his full potential. And I think with Perez on the chopping block, if they don't win the Constructors, I'm sorry, it'll have to be Perez's fault.
Yeah, it's easy to say Perez is the one at fault if Red Bull's losing this Constructors title. And you mentioned Lawson, Ricciardo, also somebody like Tsunoda, all these drivers that are in that Red Bull ladder. Is there one that stands out to you that could be a potential someone that could reach that race-winning level and support Verstappen a little better as the Red Bull number 2?
It's quite hard to find out which is a good replacement driver, because Max Verstappen is a 3-time world champion. He's Red Bull's golden boy. Of course, with Ferrari, we have Leclerc. With McLaren, I think safe to say, Lando Norris is probably their golden boy at the moment. I'm sure Piastri will be the wingman. I don't think at the moment those 3 have winning potential just yet. It's going to take a while. Lawson, of course, has only had a few Grand Prix starts. He did very well in Singapore and Zandvoort, and I think a few other races as well, when he filled in for Daniel Ricciardo last year in Zandvoort, believe it or not. But I think out of the 3, probably Tsunoda. Tsunoda has been looking on really top form better than, I would say, Perez as well. He's outperforming that V-Cub car and outperforming better than Ricciardo. Personally, in my opinion, Tsunoda should get the Red Bull seat next season, but I don't think Red Bull are thinking about that, which is a shame because Tsunoda has been doing really well this season.
Definitely. Turning back to today's race of qualifying as an indicator, we are in for an interesting show. McLaren sweeping the front row. We already established they're looking great. Max Verstappen and Sergio Perez back in 7th and 8th. However, in the middle between them, we have Ferrari and Mercedes splitting rows 2 and 3. Similar to last weekend with IndyCar at Portland, asking for a little bit of chaos with a long straightaway and a tight chicane in turn 1. Jess, I guess, what would be your approach to turn 1, and how do you think the drivers tomorrow are going to approach turn 1?
Well, turn 1's going to be an absolute nightmare for all the drivers, but at least they got rid of some of the sausage curb in at Monza, because last year was absolutely awful, and we saw in 2021 how Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton went into oblivion as well. But I think it's not going to be that much for chaos, because we saw in the sprint race in F2 and F3 that, well, in F3 it wasn't that bad, and in F2 it was absolutely chaos. So it could go either way. If I was Lando Norris, I'd make sure you commit to the corners straight away, but you got to break early into turn 1, because otherwise you're going to send someone in the first corner, because the race is not over in turn 1, right? So you just got to play it safe on the first few laps, and then go for it in towards Curva Grande, where you can get a great turn, obviously just before Sky. That's when I think the big moves can happen, especially with DRS being enabled on lap 2 instead of lap 3 this year. So I think just ignore turn 1 for now until the next few laps and focus on the corners around, because otherwise it could be absolutely chaos with 20 cars trying to make through one corner.
You mentioned DRS being activated, long straightaways here at Monza. The top 4 teams have qualified in the top 4 rows. Teams behind them with some higher end top speed, like the Aston Martin, the Haas, the Williams, somebody like Alex Albon, Nico Hülkenberg, Alonso, Ricardo. Are any of these drivers going to be able to work and finish in the top 5, or is it just going to be the usual suspects dominating tomorrow?
Well, of course, we've got 3 teams covering the top few positions. We've got Mercedes, we've got McLaren, we've got Ferrari, and Max Verstappen. I think if Perez doesn't do as well tomorrow, I think he's got to help his teammate to get there. I know McLaren's, well, it's going to be a tough call, because Lando Norris, he's got to be in it for himself if he wants to win the title. But Piastri is quite fast too, and he needs to get some good results. But it's got to get to a situation where it's getting close to the end of the championship. We've got 8 rounds to go until Abu Dhabi. Lando's got the best shot of winning it compared to Piastri. So I think Piastri's got to concentrate in helping Lando tomorrow. George and Hamilton, it's going to be a tough ask for them. So I think if there was a team that can help out tomorrow, it's got to be McLaren. They're 1 and 2 anyway. And also the Ferraris, they got to win for their Tifosi fans to imagine Carlos Sainz could win on his 30th birthday. That'll just be a dream as well. So I think it could be anyone's game tomorrow. It's not just the Red Bull win that we could expect. It could be Norris that wins, it could be Piastri, or it could be the Ferraris or the Mercedes. Anything can happen.
Interesting indeed. The biggest news coming out of this week related to Mercedes and Kimi Antonelli. Antonelli will be replacing Lewis Hamilton as George Russell's teammate next season. This weekend, he had a chance in FP1, and George's car crashed into the wall, tore up that machine. We saw young Max Verstappen, brought up by Red Bull, made plenty of mistakes, and now we have the Max Verstappen we have today. See, teams like McLaren don't love giving rookies or veterans a ton of time to figure things out. So can Mercedes give Kimi Antonelli the time that he needs to learn, make mistakes, and progress like Red Bull did with Verstappen, or is it going to be a tight leash on Kimi?
Well, first of all, it was the worst kept secret in Formula One, wasn't it? We were expecting Antonelli to be announced at Monza, regardless of what happened in FP1. I felt gutted when he crashed that car, to be honest. We saw how Lewis Hamilton had a chance at McLaren on his Formula One debut, and how good that turned out. Max Verstappen with Toro Rosso and Red Bull, how good that turned out. Piastri in McLaren, same with Lando Norris as well. Those, I'll say Mercedes and McLaren do very well in nurturing their young drivers in their academies into well-rounded driver. And I know Verstappen has made some mistakes at the start of his F1 career, and Horner was disappointed at the time, but he's still in Formula One. He's a golden boy, and he's still able to keep going and producing good results we know and love. And Antonelli, for those who don't know him, he's been so successful in karting, in Italian F4, FIA as well, and he's now in Formula 2 and did very well in Hungary. So he's won every single. He has won at least one race in every single season he's in, and in FIA, obviously, it was one of his biggest wins ever. So I think Toto wanted Antonelli from the get-go once Lewis Hamilton decided that he was going to jump ship to Ferrari. And what Mercedes are good at doing is mentoring the young talent to improve, because we know that they're not perfect from the get-go. We know that Antonelli was given some testing time in the older F1 cars, and how good was that there as well. So I think it's going to take him a while, but I'm keeping my eye on him next year as a potential replica of 2007, where he saw Lewis Hamilton get podiums and top 5 finishes and maybe a few wins if there's a bit of chaos around. So I think it's going to take him a while, I think, but people should not write him out just yet. I think he's a star in the making, despite the results he's had in F2.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Italian Grand Prix will be the second race tomorrow morning after MotoGP. So that is all set for tomorrow. Joe, let's talk about tonight's racing that starts with INDYCAR in Milwaukee.
Yeah, the Milwaukee Mile is back, and this time 2 races, with one tonight and one Sunday. Alex Palou, he has to feel pretty good entering the race weekend. 54-point lead entering tonight's race. He'll be the champion if he maintains a points lead of 50 points or more exiting Milwaukee. 49 points maximum one driver can gain on another driver in the championship, assuming Alex Palou starts the next few races. And of course, qualifying is at top of the hour for everyone to watch. Jackson, let's start off with you. Do you anticipate the championship to be over after the Milwaukee weekend?
I think we're still going to go into Nashville with the title up for grabs. Will Power, he led 100-plus laps at Gateway, taken out on a restart, and it's, if you kind of look at the points breakdown, Alex Palou, he finished 4th in that race. If you switch power with Newgarden that won the race, that would have made up 20 points on Palou if Power could have held on to win. Qualifying coming up is going to set the tone. If Palou qualifies 3rd and Power qualifies 16th, then maybe I'm changing my answer here. Heading into the weekend, Newgarden fast in practice. I think, yes, Power can hang on and continue this past Milwaukee.
I think I agree with Jackson. I think it's going to go to Nashville next time out as well. It's a double header, plenty of opportunities for people outside of Palou to get some points. And Power was looking good last week. Of course, you got Joseph Newgarden, you got the likes of Colton Herta, Scott McLaughlin looking like he could be the favourite as well. He's done very well in the past too. And Scott Dixon, he could have been in championship contention if it wasn't for that crash in that one last week in Portland. And if he messes up in the doubleheader this week, that could be his chance is gone as well. But I think definitely it can go to next week. We got some huge contenders that can challenge Alex Palou. But you never know with this track.
Never know with this track. It's been such a long time, and only a handful of drivers have been here. If Alex Palou has the lead after this weekend, I think it's going to come down to Nashville, but I think it's going to be one of those scenarios where if Palou runs a smart race, he'll be in good shape. He just has to avoid any early trouble. That's the big key for Joseph Newgarden. He was the fastest in practice. Leading into qualifying today, I think a lot of folks anticipate him to be up front, and he could qualify up front, but Newgarden and 4 other drivers will have a 9-place grid penalty for an unapproved engine change. Newgarden is one of the 8 drivers still mathematically in the championship. However, he, Scott Dixon, Pato O'Ward, and Kyle Kirkwood, they really need Alex Palou to just have bad luck to close that gap. Just does Newgarden still have the best chance of winning the championship out of those 4 drivers are over 100 points behind in the standings.
It's a tough call, but the last few races, he's had some great form. In Portland, he got on the podium and set the fastest lap. In Illinois, he got the win there as well. So I think out of those drivers, he has the better form. Scott McLaughlin has a podium too, and obviously Will Power last week. So it's a shame about that penalty for these drivers, because they've got quite a lot to overcome. But again, it's a double header, so there could be things that go wrong in turn one, like we saw a couple of weeks ago, well, a week ago in Portland. So anything could happen with that front. But Joseph Newgarden's on good form, but he hasn't won that many races this season, not as much as some other drivers. So it's going to be a tough ask, but with his recent form, I think he could challenge Palou.
I guess to answer the question, yes, I would put Newgarden as the top of the drivers 100 points. But I don't think I am even drawing the line that far down. Alex Palou's last 3 oval finishes, he had 2 top 5s at the second Gateway race, and then at Gateway in the second Iowa race. The first Iowa race, he had a DNF. If the driver that won all 3 of those races, they would only make up about 70 points on Alex Palou, and that includes a DNF. So I'm realistically, I'm drawing the line closer to where McLaughlin is, possibly Herta, if you exclude the fact that it is McLaughlin, and if anybody could sweep the last 3 races, I guess it would be him. But I think 100 points is a little far back, and I don't think anybody from 100 points is in serious title contention.
At 100 points and beyond, you need to get the pole, bonus points, lead the most lap, extra bonus points, and really hope Alex Palou just does not have at all any good luck. I really think it's up to those top 4 drivers. And of course, out of those 4 drivers, Will Power, he has won here at the Milwaukee Mile. Scott Dixon, he's won here, but he's just outside that window. One of the big things, Alex Palou, 9th fastest. He was ahead of Colton Herta and Will Power, which are respectively 10th and 11th. Scott McLaughlin, he was the 5th fastest yesterday. He was fast at Portland. We thought he was going to be on the pole. Poor qualifying effort, and then a penalty put him way in the back. He had to work his way towards the front. Gateway, we saw again Scott McLaughlin look primed to win that race, but his pit crew just a little bit slower than Joseph Newgarden's pit crew. That was the difference, and finished in 2nd place. Jackson, is McLaughlin the early favorite for Milwaukee?
Certainly a favorite going in. The last 3 oval finishes, all short ovals, 1st, 3rd, and 2nd. It's kind of why I mentioned him as being kind of that last guy in terms of still being in the championship hunt. Certainly a favorite heading in to another short oval this weekend.
I think it's still quite tough for McLaughlin potentially to win this weekend, but I think he's been looking quite good in practice, and he's done well here before. But I think I'm still keeping my eye on Newgarden due to him being so good in ovals.
Newgarden's hard to leave out of the picture. Now, of course, one of the things we've been talking a lot about the drivers in the championship pictures. We got a lot of new faces coming to Milwaukee. Some that folks will be following. David Malukas, very good at Gateway. How will he do in this oval? Pato O'Ward, who's been in the news quite a bit because of some of the news from NASCAR going to Mexico, and then his responses, and INDYCAR. He's always good in the ovals. He could be a contender. He was the 3rd fastest behind Dixon and Newgarden yesterday in practice. And Santino Ferrucci coming off that big weekend in Portland. We know he's traditionally good at the oval races. It's just a matter of, can the team get everything right with the setup of that car, pull off a perfect race? Just which other drivers do you see going for the podium or the win this weekend?
Scott Dixon, I think, probably could potentially go for the podium because he's looking for redemption, because last week did not go his way, like I was saying. Lap 1 did not go his way, unfortunately. Carl Kirkwood, I think, could challenge. He's done quite well there before. And I know Ferrucci, just missed out on the win in Indy 500 last year. Did not do as well this year, sadly. But I think those three potentially could be though. But out of those drivers, definitely, I'm just going to keep my eye on the likes of Carl Kirkwood, Rossi, and for Richie just a little bit more. And Colton Herta, I'm so surprised for Colton Herta that he's not had a podium since, I'm just trying to think when was the last time he got a podium. It was Monterey where he last got the podium. So I think he could still challenge for the podium potentially in Milwaukee, especially with the 2 double headers.
Yeah, one driver, I mean, we've said all the kind of the oval suspects, of course, like Newgarden and McLaughlin, that's what we're going to be looking at. But one name I'm interested, I'm not sure if he's going to be a podium threat, but he was on the podium at Gateway, Linus Lundqvist. I'm curious to see if that continues through to another pair of oval races, and if his IndyCar oval development is continuing to rise. So that's somebody I'm at least going to have an eye on.
Some good drivers to keep an eye on. I'm curious how Felix Rosenqvist is going to do now that they're getting a little bit more adjusted to him. Meyershank Racing, I think there's a lot of potential there. It's going to be very interesting. Of course, there's 2 races, 250 laps each, but different times of the day, Saturday evening, Sunday afternoon, then a weekend off before Nashville to end the season, Jackson. 3 oval races to end the year. And considering the lack of ovals, we've talked about plenty of times on this show, other programs on Grid 2 Network, is clustering them all at the end of the year a good way to make the ovals even more tense, since the championship is coming to an end and one mistake could be very key in the championship?
I definitely understand why they're doing it. And building these patches of schedule, you're basically textbook setting up for this scenario, right? Like you have Alex Palou with this massive lead that he develops over the summer, and then it's like, okay, well here come all the ovals at the end, where can anybody catch him in these oval races? That's kind of what you're setting up for by setting the schedule up this way. This kind of reminds me of the NASCAR Xfinity Series used to have like a really big stretch of like road courses in the summer, and be like, who's capitalizing on this patch of the schedule? For IndyCar, where it's the full season championship, not a lot of shenanigans going on. I guess this is kind of as close as they can get to that. I think it gets a little messy. I think having this many at the end is still not great. I think the little patch of ovals we had and the ideal scenario where you're ending on the Nashville street circuit, that would make sense to me. And that was the initial plan going when this schedule was built. So I'm fine with it. And yes, it does make these ovals more tense. And it allows more drivers to be on the attack, and more aggression on the oval, which of course can get dangerous, but it's also certainly entertaining.
I think I like the oval races a little bit better, like the Indy 500, for example, because like literally everyone is going full guns for it. And especially you need that for a championship finale going into the final 2 races of the season. I think that 2 oval races to finish the season would have been better instead of the 3 personally. But, we're going to be treated to some absolutely great races to round off the season, and you never know, we could see a surprise that Palou may be out of championship contention, but Palou's looking the favourite at the moment, and I think with oval race, it's just going to be anyone's game. I hope we don't get as many cautions though as we've seen in some oval races this year.
Yeah, hopefully we avoid the late caution that seems to stir chaos like we did at Gateway. Yeah. Good races throughout the day, so hopefully we'll see, and of course we'll recap the IndyCar race on Grid Live Wrap-Up on Monday, noon Eastern, because the next race, the Southern 500, much finishing up later, and of course it is one of the premier races in the NASCAR Cup Series, the crown jewel and most historic race in NASCAR this year. Is the final race of the regular season, and one of the big things, Jackson, this win of the Southern 500, we know drivers want to win the Southern 500. But if you were to get this win and you were winless this year, that punches your ticket into the playoffs. And let's take a look at the points, because you have Chris Buescher right now, 21 points above the cut line. So Bubba Wallace really in a must-win situation. He could claim 2 stage wins. Hope Buescher does not get any points. That's still going to be very challenging. Ross Chastain's 27 points, and everybody else really must-win situation. Other notables, Kyle Busch almost won Daytona. He could get a win here. Eric Jones, he has won the Southern 500 before. I don't know where legacy is going to be setup-wise, but he could potentially get a win. Austin Dillon won Richmond, but of course, with what happened, NASCAR penalized him. He lost both appeals. He was still trying to get into the playoffs. Buescher, really, if he's on 16th or better, that'll secure him the playoff spot without stage point wins and assuming no new winner. If he wins a stage, that means he gets that extra cushion, 26 or better. Buescher still really controls his destiny, but he cannot have a new race winner like a Bubba Wallace or somebody outside the 13 race winners that have won a race. Does anyone below the cut line have real opportunity, Jackson, to win the Southern 500?
I mean, the favorites going into the weekend have to be Brad Keselowski, Chris Buescher, and Tyler Reddick, right? They had that crazy battle in the spring, and even looking back at last fall, they all finished in the top 6. But if anybody is going to win from outside, I'm looking at Bubba Wallace and Ross Chastain. They both finished in the top quarter of the field both this spring and last fall. They are not, far down in a must-win situation, which is what makes them candidates to actually be the possible winner. Good track for both of them. They're obviously going to be throwing everything they have at this weekend. All the team resources that possibly could be provided, I'm sure, are going to them. So I guess, does anyone below the cut line have an opportunity to win? I think it would be Bubba Wallace or Ross Chastain. But other than that, I don't think you're not going to find any of those 20th or lower deep true surprise winners.
Yeah, I only feel somebody that low will win if we have a race where you see plenty of caution, playoff drivers have bad luck, not being contested for win, because it seems the last couple of years the Southern 500 had been very unpredictable for those playoff drivers. I just don't know if that's going to happen again this year. You just can't bank on 2 recent crazy races for playoff drivers in the Southern 500 to continue for a 3rd race in a row. Be very interesting to see what all happens. And of course, above the cut line, the 3 drivers without a win besides Buescher, Ty Gibbs, 39 points above the cut line. Martin Truex Jr. is 58 points above the cut line. Now, Truex, I almost feel that gives him a false sense of security. 58 points, because you're thinking of one stage win, you're going to be safely in. However, 37 points between Truex and Buescher. So if Gibbs was to gain 19 points on Truex, he could get around him. That's essentially 2 stage wins if Truex scores no points. Buescher, same situation. He could really cut that down with 2 stage wins if Truex has a bad race and Buescher has a really strong day. And then, of course, the wild card, if somebody brand new wins. The last 10 races for Martin Truex Jr., 8 races where he finished 20th or worse. The only 2 top 10 finishes, 8th and 9th place. Is Truex a sure bet to be in the playoff field, Jackson?
Yes, I think yes, he's going to make it. He's a veteran. He is up by 58 points, and then the scenarios we're getting into would require a new winner to really send it into a questionable state. That being said, they have to race like they are a little tighter to the bubble. He's had a really bad slump through this summer, and I would hope and assume that they're treating tonight like a playoff race. They have to maximize points. They have to put together a good day. First step, yes, making the playoffs, but really they want to make sure they're able to do something once they make it. Feels kind of like all summer we've been like, yeah, Truex is the top guy on points. Like, yeah, he's going to make it. He hasn't really been discussed because he hasn't won races and he's also not near the bubble. But like, is he going to be able to do anything with that playoff appearance? And that's kind of the storyline I'm looking with Truex tonight, rather than can he make it? It's okay, assuming he does make it, what's the momentum going forward? How do they turn around this season heading into the playoffs?
If he makes the playoffs, he really needs to change his luck. I think Truex could have a strong race. If anything, I don't think they need to go for the win. Just try to get those points, stay up front, because at the end of the day, if he's ahead of Chris Buescher, at least, he has to feel safe that he is in. Don't try to do anything too risky, especially going for an early stage win or the win do we have a low number of cars out of the race. But this is Darlington. I think we'll have plenty of cars out of this race. And, of course, that could affect on the opposite side of the playoffs. The regular season championship, Tyler Reddick leads Kyle Larson by 17 points, 18 points ahead of Chase Elliott in third. And we know you claim the regular season championship, you'll get those bonus points in the playoffs. You also get a photo shoot, which seems to be traditionally the driver's not the most happy receiving that regular season trophy. We'll see if that meme seems to continue. But out of those drivers, which one do you feel is more likely to claim the regular season championship? Reddick, Larson, or Elliott?
I have to give Reddick the edge. This is the storyline that I'm going to pay the most attention to tonight. Tyler Reddick has been on an extreme hot streak. Obviously, Kyle Larson. I mean, it's felt most of this year felt like it was the year of Kyle Larson. Yeah, I think Reddick has to be my pick going into tonight. For what it's worth, last year in the Southern 500, Larson outscored Reddick by a whopping 6 points, and Chase Elliott also finished in the top 10. When you get when you get to these guys, the margin being 17 points, that's a pretty big chunk when you're thinking about the ceiling of how high you can get. There's not a lot of margin for error up there. So assuming all three in this hunt are able to finish the race, kind of go straight forward. Dare I say that for a NASCAR race? But I think Tyler Reddick is my pick for tonight. He was in the battle in the spring, in the battle last year. Of course, Kyle Larson won, but yeah, I think Tyler Reddick's the guy tonight.
I gotta say, I feel Tyler Reddick has to be one of the two. I just don't see Chase Elliott really a contender. He seems to be very quiet lately. And then Kyle Larson, it seems he either wins or he crashes out or just not a factor for some reason. Tyler Reddick is really hot, like you say. He is just rolling with good finishes for quite some time. He could claim this, and that would be huge for 23-11 to claim the regular season championship, have a driver that's strong entering the playoffs. They'll love to get Bubba Wallace in. I think that'll be a great effort to have both cars, but they have to feel really good about what Tyler Reddick's doing as we approach the Southern 500, which is going to be 367 laps, the distance for 500 miles. We'll see if we get another overtime finish. The first two stages are 115 laps. Final stage, 137, not counting overtime yet. Tire wear and tire management, that's the big key, Jackson. We've always seen this. Last year, stage one, we saw 2 pit stop cycles when there was no cautions. So we had plenty of pit stops throughout this race, plenty of time to gain position, plenty of time to lose positions. We know there's some pit crews out there that are notorious for just stumbling, making their driver work harder, and there's some pit crews that are just known that you're going to pick up 1-2 positions if everyone's doing 4 tire stops. Throw in a 2 tire stop, which I don't think anyone's going to do. You could gain even more. Which pit crews are you looking at for the best, and which ones are you looking at as the ones that make you the most nervous, since we have so many pit stops in this race?
I mean, anybody in a battle, obviously the pressure is going to be on pit road. I feel like there was a really long stretch there where we were talking about the 23-11 cars having problems on pit road, which would, of course, impact both the regular season championship with Tyler Reddick and the bubble battle for Bubba Wallace. So I guess those are two to keep an eye on. But really, anybody in the playoffs, I just want to see what those teams are doing tonight. Any kind of pit road situation is going to be dramatic importance with just a number of stops happening, and then kind of just set us up for the playoffs, right? Like as we narrow the field, which pit crew is truly elite and who's able to perform with a big bunch of stops in one night, kind of a night to show off your pit crew and show that you are in tip top playoff form.
The playoff form is going to be really interesting to see who is ready for it. I like the pit crew of William Byron a lot. They seem to be very consistently good. I think they could help William Byron have a good finish. He's been very quiet the last few months. I just feel he might be destined to break through, get that win. That pit crew is going to be something else still. And of course, the track, too tough to tame. The Lady in Black, not an easy place to win. We have 6 past winners in the field with Kyle Larson. Denny Hamlin, 3 wins, leads all drivers. Eric Jones, 2. Brad Keselowski, he's going for the sweep this year. Martin Truex Jr. and Kyle Busch. But here's the thing, especially we talked about first-time winners. We're coming off the race weekend at Daytona where Harrison Burton won his first career win. The last driver to earn their first career win at the Southern 500, Regan Smith, 2011. Do you anticipate any surprise winners we haven't mentioned?
No, I think we've given a pretty good spread of things here. I think Darlington, as discussed, it's very difficult to stumble into a Darlington win. This isn't one that you can just a lot of NASCAR races, you kind of just have to put yourself in position and then you're there to capitalize at the moment. Whereas the way that the Southern 500 is such a grind, you have to win this race. You have to do all the things right and execute and win. And that sets up a scenario where that's not going to get somebody their first career win. I'm going on this whole monologue about it. We'll see what happens tomorrow night. But that's just what builds a scenario where it's going to be the favorites. It's a grind. It takes a full team effort with all those pit stops, and you hit everything on the head. So I don't anticipate. I think somebody I talked about Todd Gilliland is somebody that has a win on the way. Obviously, Ty Gibbs has a win on the way, but I don't think it's going to be this weekend.
That's the thing. I feel what I like about Darlington, the Southern 500, out of the crown jewel races, I feel Daytona has become almost a lottery, the Daytona 500. We've seen so many drivers earn their first win there. Quite a few drivers win the Daytona 500 but go winless. Coca-Cola 600, we've seen some fair numbers of first-time winners. It's a long race. The last few years with this generation car, it's been just as hard, I feel, as Darlington. Darlington, it seems whichever car we've had, this generation, the prior generation, the 90s, it is such a hard race to win. It means a lot to the drivers. You could get that win. And just looking at the history books of all the winners, so many Hall of Famers, not a lot of first-time winners. I'm really anticipating this is going to be a driver. We've talked about winning the race. I will be shocked if we have a first-time winner. It's just one of those tracks. If you win here, it means a lot. You have to have the experience. You have to have the pit crew. You have to run the smart race because the old saying, race the racetrack at Darlington. That's the best way to get into victory and encourage the Southern 500 tomorrow. And a reminder, Grid Live wrap-up on Monday, noon Eastern, will recap the Southern 500 INDYCAR doubleheader at Milwaukee Mile and Formula 1 Italian Grand Prix plus MotoGP weekend at Aragon. We'll bring Jess in because now it's time for us to predict who's going to win all of those races.
Yes, indeed, Joe. We still got 5 more races to go of this weekend. We had the MotoGP sprint that just happened, but of course Joe will go through that after the pick a winner. Quite close at the top of the standings with Matthew leading by 38 points to Ben Schneider on 30 points, and still quite close towards the middle of the field as well. So let's get our predictions in, and of course you can get involved as well on our Grid Network socials. We'll start with the Formula 1 Italian Grand Prix. Jackson, who is your pick a winner?
I am going with the tight constructors battle. I'm going with the front row lockout. I am picking Lando Norris to win at Monza.
I would have to agree with you, Jackson. I think it's going to be Lando Norris, maybe Piastri, but a clean start. I think it's going to be race over Lando.
I'm going to go for 3 for 3. I stuck by that prediction because I predicted it this morning. I'm going to go with Lando Norris too. So that's Formula 1 out the way. We've got the 2 races of INDYCAR in Milwaukee. We'll start off with race 1 that's happening a little bit later on. Who would you expect to win race 1 in the doubleheader? Jackson?
I'm not sure how to pick around the race 1, race 2 dynamic. I just went fully on a gut instinct. And so for race 1, I'm picking Scott McLaughlin.
Oh, man, you took my pick. I want to go with McLaughlin. I want to go a little different, though. I'm going to go 2 weeks in a row. I'm going Will Power.
That is a good pick. And I'm going to go with, I know he may get the penalty, but ovals like to bring up some surprises. I'm going to go with Joseph Newgarden. But will there be the similar picks for race 2? Well, let's find out, shall we? Are you going to go for the same for race 2, Jackson?
I am going to flip with Joe, and I'm picking Will Power for race number 2. I think he's going to get on the podium in race number 1. I think it's going for Scott. But I think in race 2 is where he's going to really lock up. He's going to close that championship margin heading into Nashville. I think race 2 is where he turns it on for Will Power winning race 2.
Nice.
I'm curious to see how this is all going to work out because race 2, no grid penalty. Joseph Newgarden will be my pick.
I'm going to stick with the similar pick to race 1, but for race 2, I'm going to go with Joseph Newgarden. But I'm a little bit more confident that he's going to do well in race 2. We didn't discuss it today, but Joe's going to discuss it in a minute. But MotoGP is at Aragon. We'll go through the sprint result in a minute. But the race tomorrow, who do you think is going to win that? Starting off with Jackson.
I guess, we won the sprint race. I feel like when I show up to pick MotoGP, I pick Marc Marquez, and it works out all right. So I'll pick him again.
Good one.
I was thinking about Marc Marquez too, but I think just because he got second place, I'm going to go with Jorge Martin because now he's the championship leader.
I'm going to go. This is the first time we're all going to go for someone different. I'm going to go for. I was going to go for Marquez, but I'm going to go for instead Pedro Acosta for the feature race. And finally, we got the regular season finale, the NASCAR 7500 at Darlington. Who do you think is going to win that one?
This is the toughest pick of the week. It's a crown jewel. It's the regular season finale. It's arguably the toughest race of the season. It is all of these things piling on top of each other. I know it's a great playoff opener, but I really don't mind it as a regular season finale. All of that being said, I'm going with somebody below the cut line to win the race. I'm going with Bubba Wallace. I had to bring up my note here to give you all the reasons here. He finished in the next gen era at Darlington. He's finished 7th, 5th, 9th, and then he wrecked out of the spring race in 2022. It was not his own doing. He was running in the top 10 with 30 laps to go, and then Martin Truex wrecked in front of him, and then Bubba was involved in the pileup. So, if you give him the benefit of the doubt in that last 27 laps, he has not finished outside of the top 10 in the next-gen era at Darlington. He's below the cut line. His teammates running for the regular season championship. I think Wallace wins the race. Reddick wins the regular season championship. Career-defining moment. Massive moment for 2311. I'm setting up the storyline for you, Bubba Wallace. Please win tonight.
Bubba Wallace is a great pick. I thought about Bubba a lot, but I think I'm going to have to go with his team owner, Denny Hamlin. He wants to get this win, try to get some points, salvage what he lost from that penalty. I think Denny Hamlin, he's good at Darlington. He could have a good race and be in victory lane.
I like those picks, to be honest. I really do. I found the tough one picking NASCAR because I don't really watch that much NASCAR, to be honest. I almost went with Bubba Wallace, actually, because of that redemption story. Wouldn't that be lovely if he wins later on? But I'm going to stick with... I'm going to be bold. I always like to be bold in NASCAR, but I never get it right. I'm going to go with the possible regular season champion, Tyler Reddick. So you can get your predictions in on our Grid Network social using the hashtag #PitterWinner, or you could go on our YouTube chat. And now I'm going to pass you over to Joe for a little bit of a MotoGP update.
Yeah, a brief MotoGP update before we close out the show. Of course, the Aragon sprint race took place today. Marc Marquez, he's back. He won his first sprint race. Second place, Jorge Martin. Very significant day. Pecco Bagnaia finished 9th place. He is now second in the points by 3 points, trailing Jorge Martin. The Grand Prix is tomorrow. Be sure to subscribe to the Grid Network so you don't miss any of our post-race coverage on Monday, noon Eastern. Since the Southern 500 will be ending late, we don't want our team to be staying up, especially on the East Coast, that late. So be sure to subscribe, hit the bell icon. Of course, MotoGP, Formula One, INDYCAR, NASCAR will be all discussed on that program. And of course, visit gridnetworktv.com. See Jackson and Matthew's articles following NASCAR, INDYCAR, including our photo gallery from Portland International Raceway. And we're very excited for the race weekend. We hope you are. And share this video with your family and friends. Get them up to speed for the race weekend. Qualifying starting up in 15 minutes for INDYCAR, so check that out. Thank you for tuning in. For Jackson Todd and Jessica Ball. I'm Joe San Diego. We'll see you next time and enjoy the races.